Those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Hansen. I just got a promotion this morning to GIS coordinator, so that's the first time I've said that. Many of you know Aaron Menza left the city for the Met Council about a month ago, so currently I make up the GIS department after our intern Sandy leaves tomorrow, so that's some fresh news. So we will be posting a new tech or analyst position sometime in the coming weeks, so let's pay attention for that. All right, so the real challenge with this project of publishing our police data for the public to consume is taking what is ostensibly our most sensitive data set, full of personally identifiable info, and making that public. So when talking about anonymization in this context, I'm talking about both attributes and geometry. There are some personally identifiable attributes such as address, even the coordinates. There are some sensitive incident types that we don't want everybody to know about, such as, maybe something that's not criminal but medical. A number of different kinds of issues that might result in a call to 911. So we had to clean up the attributes. And the second half of that is anonymizing the geometry. So the point location isn't hovering over the exact location of the call. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, you're sounding solidly great. You're good.
Oh, good. Thanks. So just starting with the attribute level anonymization, the first step was converting the address to a block level address. For example, 14041 Biscayne Ave, we just removed the final two digits and replaced them with 2 zeros. This is kind of how the blocks are structured on the avenues in Rosemount. We did a similar thing for street level address, or rather the east-west streets. This was just obviously a way to remove that immediately so that people can't place it over a house. And one challenge that we ran into with this is that some addresses aren't formatted in that just standard address notation. This is just a blank text field. So often what would be input is something that looks more like an intersection. You can see this example here. Issue with that, and the reason it can be personally identifiable, is that sometimes there's an intersection and there's a single house there. So you get a point that says domestic dispute at this intersection. It's really obvious, who is fighting there. So I made the decision, unless it's a traffic violation, just to replace this kind of address altogether with street info not available. So kind of erring on the side of caution, especially since this is an automation. I just don't want to take any chance of something coming out that does personally identify someone. There was a coordinate field as well. That's used whenever we integrate the police data, the raw police data, into our enterprise police data dataset. So it is useful, but at the end of this TL workflow, I do strip that field out entirely just so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, now the fun stuff, the point anonymization. Kind of did this in two steps. The first step was offsetting the points up to 3/4 of a block in any direction. So the way I did that was I generated a random angle between 0 and 2 pi, 0 and 360 degrees. I don't know why I chose to use radians for this, but I did. And then I generated a random distance between 0 and 0.075 miles. Just assuming the standard block is about 0.1 miles. I didn't want these points to be so far off that they're not even on the correct block anymore. The next step was to convert the coordinate pair into latitude and longitude offsets. And I'll just go through the process for this. It was a little more tricky. If you can recall SOHCAHTOA from high school or college trig class, basically just having that random angle and that random offset already generated gives us two givens to help us solve algebraically for either longitude or latitude using sine and cosine respectively. The one way you can really trip yourself up on these kind of equations is uh, putting latitude on this, what looks like a vertical axis and longitude on the what looks like a horizontal axis. The reason that it's done this way, what looks like the wrong way, is because 0 degrees is technically facing to the right. And as we know in geography, 0 degrees is technically north. So you really have to just upend that triangle. So that's kind of how I went about calculating those offsets from the angle. The next step after randomly offsetting those points up to 3/4 of a block in any direction is I snapped them back to the street center line. And I'll show examples at the end of this of how it looks in the end, but basically I was trying to prevent these points from ending up over people's houses, because even though we plastered this dashboard with disclaimers about offsets and anonymity, there's going to be people that open the dashboard, see it over a house, don't read anything else, and immediately call their friends to share some gossip. So snapping to the center lines was basically a matter of first finding all the center lines that might be within that uh, that area after the offset, and then calculating a 0 to 1 name match confidence, and then snapping to the nearest center line that has a high match threshold on the name. The reason I couldn't just look for a perfect match is, for one, like I said, this was a free entry text field, but in addition to the street, there's also the address number. So I had to account for that, and also differing nomenclatures sometimes on the way the address is written. So this is just a scan of my first validation after running the code. You can see the red points are the original police incident data points. The green points are post-processing, and I connected them with the highlighter, as you can see. So this point here, that second house, got shifted about a house and a half over down to that center line. Some of these got shifted a couple houses down. And that's when I realized my original use of 0.05 miles wasn't quite enough. So after this, I switched to 0.075 miles prior to doing that snap to the center line. You might wonder why I didn't snap to the center line and then shift point, and that's a great question. The answer is simply I couldn't really figure out how to do it along the line using ArcPy or other Python modules. If you have an idea on that, I'd be curious. It seems to be working fine, shifting it and then snapping it down to the center line, but yeah, that's a conundrum that still interests me. So just kind of going over the real overview of this ETL pipeline. I started with our enterprise geodatabase police data. This is something we get from Logis every day and process with Python into that layer. From there, there is a Python script. You could also do this with SQL, but like I was saying, we already have a Python script that is kind of integrating the Logis data with our main police data. So this kind of went naturally with our existing Python workflows. So the script runs, it does all the anonymization that I just showed, field filtering and so on, and puts that into an enterprise staging layer. And we just have a definition query on that layer before Python sends the data to ArcGIS Online. And that definition query is really just filtering out different incident types prior to sending it to ArcGIS Online. I chose to do it that way just because it's easy to maintain that filter if we want to change it going forward. So instead of doing like a truncate append and just, refreshing the entire layer every day, the way I opted to do this is on our main police data layer. I have a tracking field called public processed. And after processing, that changes to yes. And it'll get filtered out immediately the next time the script runs, as it starts with a filter that just looks for police incidents where this field is null. So after processing, like I said, it shifts to yes. If the point happens to be outside the city boundary, it'll change that field to outside city boundary. And likewise, it'll get ignored in the future, since our dashboard is really just looking at points inside the city. This is just a larger view of the workflow. See, we start with that filter so that we're only looking at the unprocessed incidents. We then clip, filter the columns, filter out sensitive incident types, which actually I moved that to that definition query, so you can ignore that. I ambiguate the address, ambiguate the point geometry, and share to ArcGIS Online. You can see some of the Python modules used, everything pretty standard. And I'll just wrap this up with a demo. So we just published this probably last month, I think. This is now live for the public. So you can see one way that we anonymize it is by setting the zoom level. So as you get close, like close enough for the houses to start filling in on the base map, the points disappear. If you click a point, you can see that block level address. It says 14200 block Alma Ave. Tells you the crime against category, which I'll talk about here in a second. And yeah, another thing you'll notice is that all of these points run along the street and none of them are showing up over anyone's house. Right below it, we added some disclaimers just to help people understand what's going on. I also made this little help sidebar just so people can read a little bit more about privacy, what kind of data is shown, how to use the dashboard. So something we did copy from some other cities we saw is this use of crime against category. So you can see crimes against society, people, property, and other. This was kind of ad hoc the way that we categorize this, just based on the incident types. For example, some of them are more obvious than others. Like burglary would be a crime against property. But if you click on them, you can see all of the top 10 incidents change so that we're now only looking at crimes against people. You can see the years here, and these also filter further. So now we're looking at 2023 only, those 278 incidents. Clicking around also filters the map. Switch that up, look at property crime, see the top 10 here. So happy with the way it turned out. Feels pretty user-friendly being able to click around like that. We also have some date ranges at the top and incident types if someone knows exactly what kind of incident they're looking for.